You're very welcome, everybody. Welcome to this second session of the All-Island Innovation programme with Agri-Food, InterTradeIreland and Queen's University of Belfast. I'm Brian McCaul, I'm Director of Innovation at Queen's University and also CEO of Cubis. And in this session, we're going to be focusing on putting innovation into practice, in particular, looking at market validation. Cubis is the tech transfer company of Queen's University. So if you like, we're in the business of creating new businesses, new technology businesses from the research base of Queen's. Sometimes we spin in other ventures, but predominantly from ideas and innovations arising from Queen's, from the protection, discovery of the IP, validation, which is what I'm going to try and focus on today, through to growing those businesses and potentially floating them. So if you like, from IP to IPO. That first stage is notoriously difficult because we're dealing with opportunities for which it's so uncertain to determine whether there's a scalable business or there's something in this. And it's usually what people would describe as pre the valley of death. So even before other people are prepared to invest in it. So the validation part of the process is really very important for us. And our whole raison d'etre really is to get the businesses, those early ventures, to the point where they're sufficiently de-risked that other people are prepared to pick up from there and invest in them, and they can either generate revenue, grant income, or VC income. We have really a sort of very straightforward process, four-step process for helping de-risk those businesses. I'll run through that and focus perhaps on the validation, the market validation side of that. But before doing that, I just wanted to sort of touch on some of the track record of Queen's and Cubis very quickly, in order just to give some validation behind this process. We've created about 90 companies during our existence as Cubis. Most of those survive, about 76% of those survive through to year 5, which is an order of magnitude better survival rate than most startups. Most of those are still going. We have a portfolio currently of 40 odd companies. We've sold a number of those companies over the last few years, and that reduces our portfolio, but we're always adding new companies to that. I'll say a little bit later about the run rate on that and how the process of lean validation helps us increase that clock speed of what we do. So we were also assessed or ranked as being the most entrepreneurial university in the UK for 2 years running by Octopus Ventures. That's very much a sort of return on investment perspective. So I'll just outline those 4 steps. At the highest level, really, it's about validating those ideas, deciding which of the early stage innovations we're going to focus on. Traditionally, tech transfer organizations have tended to spend most of their time working around the technical validation, so proof of concept work, working up the technical features and the robustness of the technology. Often spent time working on size of the market, business plans, etc. But I'm going to touch on some other features of market validation, which I think are perhaps more important, more pressing. The second stage for us is to build an entrepreneurial team. Most businesses, there's some honourable exceptions to this, and we have some in our portfolio, where they are led by academics or ex-academics. But generally what we try and do is we inject a seasoned entrepreneur into the business and build a team around them. And of course, that's part of the validation process as well. Generally, seasoned entrepreneurs won't come on board unless you think there's something in this idea. That's easier than it sounds. Finding the right people, keeping them in the business, stopping people falling out is all part of the process. And sometimes we have to do that multiple times. And then we raise dilutive and non-dilutive cash in order to drive that forward. By and large, non-dilutive grant monies before private equity comes in. And that's not easy. It's not easy. It's generically a difficult issue at this stage, just because it's such a risky stage of the development. But specifically in Northern Ireland, that's all the more difficult. It's difficult because of the structure of the UK economy. Over 50% of investment is raised in the southeast, or specifically London. And if you were to look at the investment records, Northern Ireland is probably the least active area. So we have to be particularly lean. We have to spend quite a bit of time in order to make sure that those businesses are very attractive to investors. We have to spend quite a lot of time networking with investors. This is why this lean methodology, this customer validation, is so important to us. That said, it's still surprisingly common that businesses will generate investment without having fully established product market fit, without the sufficient evidence and signals that there's somebody in the marketplace that's prepared to pay for that. So in our mind, it's going beyond developing the total addressable market size, working out notionally what percentage somebody would be able to gain of a particular market. We're certainly intent on encouraging academics not to talk about their features and to talk about the potential value proposition. And we wove this into a methodology. We've driven this right into the heart of everything that we do. At Queen's, we started in about 2015 with our own Lean Launch program, as it was called then, Lean Launchpad, we call it now, in conjunction with Imperial College and with Ulster. And at that time, we were taking 5 early stage opportunities, maybe twice a year from each university, Ulster and Queen's, and driving them through this lean process, which I'll describe a little bit more detail. We had some very early successes out of that, the likes of Causeway, Sensors, Fion, etc., that we've gone on to raise and invest in ourselves. And since then, we have worked with Set Squared, and we have worked with Innovate UK in particular to develop the iCure program, and we lead on the iCure program, many other spin-offs out of that, which are designed to, in a very systematic way, validate the value proposition of these early stage businesses. So I'll just go on to describe that a little bit. I've already mentioned the value proposition. That's the key thing for us. Naturally, founders, whether entrepreneurial founders or academic founders, will be very keen to talk about the technology. They'll be very keen to talk about its features and why it's different and distinct from existing propositions in the marketplace. And they will assume often, and again, there's a positive feature to that. You need that exuberance in order to drive a business through that hard stage, but it also needs to be tempered by a real understanding of whether there's a need for this in the marketplace. So step one is to get them to define the value proposition. As I say, not the technology. Often, we encourage them not to talk about the tech. We teach them, or we walk them through a process on how to succinctly summarize that value proposition to potential customers, so that it focuses on the pains, addressing pains that a customer might have, or giving them very clear gains that are measurable and meaningful to their business. An important facet of that is to, at the same time as teaching them to succinctly explain the value proposition or the potential value proposition for their early ideas, is pre-business, if you like, is also to encourage them to be in receive mode or listening mode. If you like, at this stage, there's no certainty, there's only a hypothesis, there's no data. And we're trying to encourage them to gather as much data in the marketplace as to what customers need, what the pains and gains are as possible. So it's an important balance. Often you'll hear external entrepreneurs advise that it's simply about teaching academics to sell, and that's the key thing. Of course, selling is critical, but there's a phase before this where listening is, if anything, more important. So gathering data on the needs of potential customers is absolutely crucial, and we walk them through that process. In doing that, ideally, they're starting to set out what their market segment is. They're trying to identify a market segment in which they can focus that hypothesis testing, and they can get repeatable data from similar types of customers and organizations and stakeholders in the marketplace. So they get some meaningful data. Even more ideally, although I'd say it's very difficult to get onto this, that first phase of establishing a clear and describable value proposition and getting some signal from the market that there's interest there is pressing and difficult enough. Moving on to the repeatability of that, the size of that market, and whether how much and how many people are prepared to pay for that is also part of the process, but in many ways is absolutely dependent on that first stage. We use the business model canvas, which people may be familiar with. So if you like, blocks 1 and 2, describing the value proposition and working out who your market segments are really the starting point of this journey. One of the things that we do, and as I say, people will often focus on desk-based market research, total addressable market size, etc. The biggest failure in our experience is, and I mean this metaphorically now, although we used to do it literally, teach people how to get out of the building. In many of these programs, part of the process was to give them a significant travel budget to go out and meet whoever they needed to be, whichever part of the globe, the potential customers. We've quite successfully taken all of that online now, and if anything, it's sort of flattened the approach to approaching customers. It's made it more efficient, and we've been able to use some of the resource that we used to deploy in quite literally in travel for other market discovery type activities. All of these programs, ideally, we like to see the team, and we'll hold their hand through this process, but we'll encourage them to engage with around about 100 customers. So quantum is important, and in my view, when they get to that sort of 50, 60 mark, that's when things start to really sort of click in their mind as to whether there's any interest in this, in the value proposition and what they're doing in the marketplace, or if the interest or the value lies in a slightly different, you hear people commonly talk about pivoting, whether that's necessary, or indeed, fail early and fail fast. In fact, this is interesting, it has some application or some value in a research context or some other context, but there isn't the basis of a scalable business in this. We've gone on to develop the Lean Launch program into our work with ICUR. So Innovate UK is the UK's primary innovation agency. And we deliver their ICUR program, which is based on the ICORPS models in some sense, some of the same DNA. So Lean startup model has been adopted in the US and I believe in the Republic. Also, it's a large program, so we are taking in across the UK 4 cohorts of say 15 potential businesses a year. So there's quite a big input and potentially a big output from that. Some very significant businesses. People have heard of Xylo, having come through this process, having been sold for 630 odd million to Novo Nordisk, and many others. We've had quite a lot of success out of this. We, as well as organizing the process, we are heavy users of it. I would say that now through the ICUR process, we have this year alone created 4 businesses through that process. It shows the extent to which we've been able to scale up our spin out and technology transfer activity. Perhaps when I started about 7 years ago in Cubis, we created about 2 businesses a year. We are now at the point where we are this year, we're at half year point, we have created 4 businesses. We expect to be able to create about 5, 6 or 7 this year. Importantly, all of them have generated at creation non-dilutive grant income, and they have also generated match VC investment. So there's no trade-off through this process of creating more businesses versus the quality of these businesses. These businesses all have some evidence, early stage, of product market fit. There's somebody out there is keen to buy this if we meet the right performance metrics. And that's clearly what drives our ability then to generate non-dilutive resource. And the VCs love that because it means these propositions have gone through a very rigorous customer discovery process, a very important part of the due diligence process, which perhaps tech transfer organizations weren't quite as rigorous on previously. But not only that, they're also bringing in external entrepreneurs and non-dilutive money before they invest. So they're heavily de-risked. But the benefits of this customer discovery process have been so profound for us that we started to experiment with developing them in other directions. So we work with EIT Food to provide their seedbed accelerator. So this is using similar methodologies, tweaked and adapted for Agri-Tech with EIT Food. We have worked with Cancer Research UK. We've worked with the Industrial Strategy Challenge funds around construction, and we have specific programs in digital, which we're trying to drive more out of the universities in the north of Ireland in terms of digital opportunities through DigiSpark. And more latterly, actually, in fact, we are now taking these methodologies, we're working again with Innovate UK, have been very supportive in this, to make them available to existing SMEs. So ideally scale-up companies as well as our own spin-out activities. So if you like, we've proven these technologies for developing rapidly early stage new ventures. The question is now whether there's an application of this to help existing ventures. In some ways, there's a big distinction between a hypothetical new start of a spin out and what you think would be an existing business with a defined and repeatable business model. But of course, they need to find their next wave of innovation, Horizon 2 and Horizon 3. So we're getting a great deal of success and interest from businesses in Great Britain and Northern Ireland coming through this process also. If you like, I never envisaged that we would be running these programs across the United Kingdom, across Europe, and we're also working through the Lean Launchpad with universities in the Republic. But the efficiency that we've gained from this, the ability to rapidly move early stage ideas through this process, and the ability to work with our partners in North by Northwest, and also to partner with Helix Hub, has given us quite a bit of an ability to not just handle increased throughput of our own ventures, but to support other universities and other early stage ventures in doing this. I would give a sort of a nod to Helix Hub, because in the size of this activity now, we've partnered with that organisation, Helix, in order to scale up and specialize in the delivery of these programs so that we can, as a tech transfer office, revert back to our core activity of building the businesses. If you like, we've moved from a very early experiment where we were testing a handful of businesses through our own homemade Lean Launch program to a position now where we have about 4 or 5 different programs which reach across Europe, and we've scaled up. All of this actually is on about the same footprint, the same resource within Cubis, largely because of the ability to partner with Helix Hub. I'm going to leave it there, and I'm going to hand over to Professor Chris Elliott. I would say that Chris knows this process well. Chris is well involved in EIT Food, and indeed in fact, 2 of his businesses have been through the lean process that I've been describing. His more recent business, Beer Analytical, is a food fraud detection business which performed particularly well in the ICURE process and which generated non-dilutive and private investment through this process. So it would be handy perhaps to hand over to Chris and let him describe his experience of creating new businesses from research.
Thanks for the kind words and the introduction, Brian. So maybe just to recap, I am Chris Elliott, and I'm Professor of Food Safety at Queen's University. I established the Institute for Global Food Security here quite a number of years ago. And I'm very, very active in terms of many aspects of our global food supply system. And that's really what brought me to thinking about commercializing some of our research that we've undertaken over quite a number of years. So we have formed our company, BA Analytical, and it's something I'm extremely proud of. And BA Analytical was very much established because a lot of the underpinning work that we have done here as academics, and academics, you know, you've got to bring in funding, you've got to publish your work, but also you've got to try to deliver impact of your research. And one of the ways we thought about doing this was, let's take some of the work out of the research laboratories and let's get it into the commercial world where it will have that hopefully very, very positive impact. And in terms of what BA Analytical does, it looks at people who cheat in the global food supply system for economic gain. That can be individuals, it can be businesses, or believe it, organized crime gangs. And what we've done is we've taken a lot of the research over many years and tried to develop very, very simple to use technologies that can, within a few seconds, tell you if your food is genuine or has been tampered with, has been adulterated. And our work is very much geared towards supporting, we call it the good actors, those people who want to do things properly in the global food supply system and who have to compete against those people who cheat. So it's about leveling the playing field. And what we are developing is, the idea is that not only in laboratories, but right across food supply chains, right across the world, food commodities, ingredients can be checked and tested to make sure they're authentic within a few seconds. So I think it's very, very exciting research and will have that massive impact. In terms of thinking about moving it from a research environment to a commercial environment, that is really quite a difficult journey. Often we talk about TRLs, technology readiness levels, and there is a scale going from 1 to 9, and TRL 1 is where you do that fundamental research to find out whether it has any merits at all. And TRL 9 is where you get the commercial product, and you have to try to systematically move from 1 to 9. And we call TRL 5 and 6 the valley of death, where you think you've got something working nicely in a laboratory, but to try to get it to a commercial product is really, really very difficult. And I guess what I would like to talk about is how we moved from the valley of death to something that has now been very successfully commercialized. And to do that, we had to get a lot of support within Queen's University Belfast, particularly from Cubis, and the expertise that resides within Cubis in terms of how you commercialize products, whether you look for partnerships for licensing or whether you go the whole hog and try and set up your own company. The advice is quite tremendous. We also got a lot of support from InvestNI in Northern Ireland, and we got quite a lot of funding from what are called the proof of concept programs to move that TRL from 5 and 6 up towards 7 and 8. And then we applied for what's called the iCure program, and we were successful in iCure. And what iCure allowed us to do was to go out and actually talk to the marketplace. We think we have something that is of commercial relevance, but my goodness, you really got to understand that the market thinks the same thing as you do as an academic. So in iCure, we talked to more than 100 people in companies, different parts of supply chains right across the world, and got phenomenal feedback. And the feedback was very positive in saying is, if you can deliver what you say you can do, absolutely, we see that we would find a use for that in our business. So that was very, very important, that market validation work. Then, of course, we have to think about how do you go from this idea about you want to set up a company to actually setting up the company. And again, we had to think about the funding for this. And to get something off and running takes quite a lot of money. And again, we were, I think, very, very lucky, very fortunate that there was the Innovate UK program that was running that we could apply for. And we were, again, very successful on that and got quite a substantial amount of money from Innovate UK to launch the company. And that was as a grant, it wasn't as a loan. But one of the really difficult things to do was Innovate UK said, here's a tranche of money, now you've got to go and find pretty much match funding to get the company off and running. And where do you suddenly find somebody to pay out, you know, hundreds of £1,000s to get a venture off and running? And again, this was a new experience for us. So we had lots of discussions and meetings with venture capital companies, with a lot of angel investors. And again, I think we were very fortunate that we got a small group of angel investors who absolutely liked the idea of what we were doing. They could see the benefit to their own businesses, but to the wider marketplace. Also, all of the angel investors either come from a background of the food industry or the IT industry. And our product, our BA analytical technology, is very much based on good hardware, but even better software. So the angel investors not only wrote very nice checks for us, but the knowledge and the networks that they have that they brought to be analytical has been really quite phenomenal. Now, where we're set now at the moment is we launched the company in the middle of 2020, just in the middle of a global pandemic. You know, when else would you want to start a company? But despite that, what we have already started to do is, for a spin-out company, I think is really quite unusual. 6 months down the road, we've started to generate revenue. We've already launched 2 products, 2 more were launched very, very recently, with more revenue generation coming along as well. And that is important. The feedback to the investors is to say that the business plan that we put in place, we are starting to deliver. We're bringing revenue in. And also we are back and re-engaging with all of those people we talked to at the outset and saying is, we talked about a concept, now here is our company. And we're doing quite a number of different pilot projects with small food companies, some multinational food companies, different parts of the world to trial our technology. So that's really where we've started off, where we're going to now. I think it's one of the really the better things I've done as a university academic, probably one of the more challenging things that I have set out to achieve. We've got a fantastic group of employees in the company, and at the start, all of the employees were researchers that have come through my ranks. And what I really see is that for a lot of my undergraduate students and postgraduate students and postdoctoral researchers, there is a career waiting for them in BA Analytical, because we've started off small, but our ambition is to be the world leading company in food authenticity. It's a massive, massive market. It's not going to decline. It's going to get more and more important as we go forward. So I think the future is very bright for BA Analytical, but really we would not have succeeded without the massive support that we got from Queen's University, particularly from Cubis, the massive support we've got from the UK government agencies, Invest in I and Innovate UK. And, you know, if you've got the idea, why not go for it? And I think that the next speakers are investors, and they will maybe tell you about the importance of the company itself. What is it you're setting out to do? Do you have a good business plan in place? Have you got all of the markets thought through carefully? But have you got the desire and willingness to take on all of those different challenges? So I hope you'll hear lots more about BIA Analytical, because we call it the future of food fraud detection. Watch this space. Thank you very much.
Okay, hi everybody. Thank you very much for having me here today. We're delighted to have an opportunity to talk to you all about a little bit about the Yield Lab Europe, who we are, what we do, and a bit more about agri-food tech investing, which is where is our niche in terms of what we focus on. So my name is Nikki Deasy. I'm the managing partner of our fund. We are one of the largest early stage specialist agri-food investors in Europe. We invest around Europe in early stage companies that we believe have potential to become international superstars, that focus on improving the sustainability and the carbon footprint of the agri-food industry. So the industry historically has been a contributor to lots of different types of environmental problems around the world. And there's a need to move the industry away from, I suppose, a focus on ensuring food sufficiency for the world, and instead moving more towards beyond that into how we produce food and how we feed the world's population, which I think today is around 7.5 billion and is expected to become around 10 billion by the year 2050. So if we keep doing things the way we're doing them, there's going to be a lot of environmental impact. As we know, in Ireland, for example, agriculture is the biggest contribution to our greenhouse gas emissions here. There's lots of other issues around the world with things like deforestation and biodiversity loss, pollution of waterways and runoffs from fields and things like that, and animal welfare issues. So it's a sector really that is overdue an overhaul. And the European Green Deal and the European Commission is very focused around pivoting the industry into a much more sustainable future. And that's echoed now with Biden and his ambitions towards carbon neutrality and seeing agriculture as a key element of that. And likewise over in China, we see in the last 12 months, a big focus on getting China's carbon emissions down and agriculture and cleaning that up, and food quality and food safety being key. So there's a global trend around all of this. And our view is that key to enabling that transition is to invest and scale really good quality disruptive technologies to enable that to take place. So that you still get the same quality and quantity of food, and we don't have food scarcity problems and high prices, but we produce food in a way that is sensitive to the planet and to people, and that is fair and equitable for farmers and things like that as well. So that's a little bit about what we do. Our sector has gone from being a kind of a ag-quat. You know, when I first started this in 2017, nobody really had heard of ag-tech. It was kind of a what do you do? Whereas now it's very mainstream. We've seen huge growth in many different areas. And I suppose the key sectors that we would expect to see significant growth in and significant interest in, one is around what is termed alternative proteins. And that's moving away from animal and dairy proteins and moving towards other sources such as plant-based proteins. There's insect proteins, big interest in cellular meat. And we've all these, you know, we can see Impossible Foods and Beyond Meats and all these companies, and there's been some very substantial funding rounds, there's been IPOs, there's a lot of interest in that sector and a lot of capital going into that sector. Other areas where there's a lot of investor interest is robotics. COVID has put pressure on supply chains for people. Farming has traditionally relied on migrant labor to come in and do jobs like weeding and picking, etc., particularly of fruit and fresh produce. And COVID has closed borders and disallowed those labor flows. So farmers are looking for better ways to reliably replace that kind of low quality labor, and they're poor jobs, and they're poor working conditions, and they're dangerous jobs in many cases, with automation of all of that. Other areas getting a lot of interest is around supply chain technologies. Again, COVID has put a lot of focus on supply chains and technology to enable that and understand that, including blockchain and other technologies are coming to the fore. And there's many other areas. The other area, of course, is around moving away from chemical herbicides and pesticides and chemical fertilizers and moving towards more sustainable ways of growing sufficient crops in our fields and protecting them from diseases. So again, we would also have some investments in that area. We today have 11 companies that we've invested into, and we would expect to bring that portfolio up to probably in the region of 15 to 20 companies by the end of the year. We also run an accelerator program where we do some early stage investing. And then our main fund, which is where most of our money is, some of the companies come in through that channel, and the rest we just invest into directly, mainly starting at seed stage, where companies have good quality products and technology, and they have a team, and they've been at this maybe for 12 to 36 months. They do have evidence of what they're doing, but they're not yet at full-scale commercialization. So they might be putting together a round of kind of $500,000 to $1 million or $1.5 million, that kind of size, and we might come in as part of that round. And then we follow through to Series A and Series B and beyond. We're part of a global network of funds. We have sister funds in North America, LATAM, and also over in Asia Pacific. We have very strong networks and very strong due diligence expertise and depth in the team in terms of really having deep people, be it in IoT and AI, machine learning kind of technologies, into biotech technologies, animal health technologies, so we're comfortable investing in complex technologies and getting to the bottom of those opportunities. And we're very hands-on, and we put a lot of time into our companies. We've had many successes. Our companies, since we've started investing, all of our companies are still going, which is great, since 2017. 9 of the 11 companies raised substantial capital last year, which is great, important in COVID times, and the portfolio to date is doing very well. We also focus very much on impact and managing and measuring impact, so that we really can make sure that our companies are having the type of environmental impacts that they claim, and analysing that and tracking that correctly is a key part also of what we do and what we bring. What do we look for in a startup that perhaps might want to come to us to pitch to us? So I receive many emails. Every day I receive emails from companies saying, hey, we're raising a round, we're looking for investment, can we present to you? And I say, yeah, well, first things first is send me in your deck. So the first step you need to go through is to have a really good deck. If you don't have a good deck, I would suggest you go and do an accelerator program somewhere. NDRC runs them, and there's many others. SOSV have several. Some of these are international, and with COVID, you can access this programming without having to physically go anywhere, which is great. But a lot of them will help you get your deck right and get your pitch right, and that's really important. And while the deck will to some extent put lipstick on the pig, at some level, you need to have a pig that people will want to buy. And no matter how well you present your story, you also need to have the right ingredients in that story for it actually to be ultimately successful and withstand the due diligence process. So a number of points on that. We like really good quality technology or science. So we want something that is deep and complex, because if it's not, and if you're successful, everyone else will jump on the bandwagon. Every corporate will be after you. They'll be going, oh, look at these young guys, they've done this, or those girls have done that. We'd be able to do this. And we have the distribution networks, and we have the money, and we have the R&D labs, and we have the testing facilities and all the other ingredients that we need to make this successful. So if we try and copy this good idea, they're probably going to wipe the floor with you. So you need to think, who will be able to copy this, and how do we make sure that nobody can copy that, so that we get a little bit of time, if we get this to market and we can show that people want to buy it, then we have a window, a number of years, where we can then get out and start commercializing that before we just get crowded out by other people. So that's a key thing to think about. What are the barriers to entry? It's different for regulated products. For example, we do quite a lot of investing in things like biostimulants, biofertilizers, animal health products. Those are all regulated products because they end up in the human food chain. So there's big, FDA and European equivalent rules around safety and efficacy, and, is there any residues left in foods and all that. So that provides, to go through that process costs a lot of money and takes a few years. That provides a natural barrier to entry. For companies who don't have regulated products, they need to think hard about that. And of course, it's doable. Stripe is a great example. I mean, anyone can, in theory, develop a payments platform, but yet they did it and were massively successful in a way that other people weren't. So it doesn't have to be regulated, but you need to think clearly about that. Another thing is team. I think quite often very strong technical people think that the product will somehow sell itself. And really the key to this is in developing the right technology. And the commercial side is less important. As any venture capitalist will tell you, and indeed experienced business person, taking technologies and bringing them to market and getting market, buy-in and acceptance and having something that really takes off and grows is actually a very difficult thing to achieve, and is absolutely critical to the success of the business and your ability to raise capital and your ability to see increases in your value and to get a good exit. It's all about growth. So you need to have really good people on the team in the early days to shape the strategy and make sure that as you come out of the technical stage that you're ready, that you've everything lined up for that commercial stage in the business. And if you haven't really thought about that and you don't have the expertise, you probably will come out of that stage having spent the money and not at a point where you can actually take the next step. What else do we look for? A good IP strategy. We generally focus on IP. And a large addressable market, something that's really going to turn the dial, not some kind of small little gadget that's going to be like a better mousetrap kind of thing, like on a farm, a particular device that will catch the cow, or small things are hard to sell and they're just one item. So we prefer more larger scale solutions that integrate lots of different things so that the person buys one thing and within that there's a good cover and a good solution for the person. And that also you've worked out the financial use case for the customer in terms of why they would actually spend money buying your product and what the impact looks for them and how you can prove that that is the financial impact for them, and that if you're selling it for €100, that they really are going to be €200 or €300 per year better off for having purchased your technology. And they can see that very clearly and understand that, and that will enable your technology to scale. So those are just a few things that we would look at. So just to finish up, just to say thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to talk to you today. I do appreciate it on behalf of our fund. If anyone has a technology that they think might be ready for investment and is raising pre-seed, seed or Series A money, please do get in contact. You can reach out to me through LinkedIn. Nikki Deasy is my name. Or you can send us a deck to europe@theyieldlab.com. Our website is yieldlab.ie, where you'll find more information about us and who we do and our portfolio companies. So thank you again, and best of luck, everybody, and wishing you all every success in your journeys. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Eleonore from 5 Seasons Ventures, and I'm super happy to be here today to talk to you about food tech investment. So maybe before starting, a quick word about me and about 5 Seasons Venture. So I've joined 5 Seasons Venture in September, and previously to this, I was also working in the venture capital world at Hardcore Capital, which is a consumer-focused fund based in Denmark, but I was working for the Paris office. It was a pretty early stage company, and we were investing at pre-seed stage in general. So I've joined 5 Seasons in September, and since then it's been an incredible journey. So basically what we're doing at 5 Seasons is that we're investing at a Series A stage in European companies in the food tech space. So more precisely, we're focused on consumer brands in different categories and in grocery delivery platforms. We also have one AgTech investment in gene editing for crops in developing countries. In terms of geography scope, we're really focused on Europe. We have participations in the UK, France, Switzerland, Germany, Italy also. So we're really a pan-European team and fund. So that was 5 Seasons Venture, but I want to talk to you now more about, agri-food tech in general. So the food tech space is very interesting space, which I start to be very familiar with. At 5 Seasons Venture, we really focus on a few key trends that we've identified. So of course, we're focusing on building brands and in different categories. So what we've seen recently, and the most interesting categories, are functional food. So, food as medicine has been a trend for a lot of time, and it's becoming more pregnant since the pandemic. So functional food in different areas, of course, immunity, silver tech, weight management problems. It's been one of our main focus at 5 Seasons Venture for a bit of time now. We're also focused on solution around water, and that's why we recently invested in AirUp, a company based in Germany, and rethinking waters in smart bottles. So that's also one of our focus. Another focus has been, the frozen area and frozen food. We've seen with the pandemic that consumers are more and more asking for frozen options, either prepared meal that they can buy in retail space or meal delivery in the meal delivery area. We've also focused particularly on low and no alcohol solution and beverage. There's been an incredible amount of startups that have been founded in this space. We are firm believers that the low alcohol category will boom in the next couple of years. Of course, plant-based food is also one of our main focus. We have a company called This, which is doing plant-based meat in the United Kingdom. They're doing incredibly well, and we're still looking for option to invest in this space. So that's really for, I think, the food consumer brands, but we're also looking at other areas. As I said in the beginning, we already invested in 2 grocery delivery companies, and we're still looking to invest in this space as it's really booming at the moment. So we've seen a lot of vertically integrated delivery platforms that promise the consumer to deliver everything within 10 minutes. So there was, of course, GoPuff in the US, but now there's a brand new wave coming to Europe, and that's really exciting. So we have Getir in Turkey, but you probably also heard of Dija in the UK and Gorilla in Germany. So that's also one of our focus. I'm going to keep that short, of course, but one last word maybe on restaurant software. That's also one of our main sector of interest, as there's a lot of things going on here. So restaurants are really going through a difficult period, and to help them, they need 2 things: to grow their revenues and to diminish their costs. There are really lots of different trends happening here, from direct ordering channel to contactless payment solution to help ensure safety in the restaurant space, to robotic solutions to help streamline the production. So there's a ton of things going on, and that's really interesting. Things that I think are missing in the food tech sector are first, more impactful solution. So of course, startups and corporates are really leveraging this trend and trying to create innovative solution for a more sustainable world, but I think it's not enough. And at 5 Seasons Venture, we're really committed to funding and supporting entrepreneurs, building startups for a better world. So we're really interested, namely in bioplastic, in supply chain efficiency, in waste management solution, in upcycling, food upcycling. This has been a major focus, even if we haven't found yet the startup that we wanted to support here in Europe, but we're still looking. So that's something that is missing. And another, I think, key area that is missing, or at least that is under the radar, is personalized nutrition. So of course, corporates are really interesting into that trends, and startups are trying to leverage also that trend. We've seen that Bayer has bought care of recently, but there is not enough really personalized solution here on the market. It's so we want to see more macrobiome testing coupled with food products, or glucose monitoring sensors coupled to companion apps. That's what we want to see. And here in Europe, at least, it's still early days for these kind of solutions. Agri-food tech is really ready to tackle this trend. And I think, in a sense, pandemic has been a trigger for this new wave of trends. Startups and, well, society in general, consumers are starting to realize that they cannot keep up like this, and that things have to change. So I think the pandemic, in a sense, has been a really good trigger for the food industry. What I said on the pandemic is also true for investors. Investors are starting to realize that they really have to have also a sustainable investment strategy, and that's what we're doing here at 5 Seasons. So we're our further fund will be impact driven. And we're also putting in place some KPIs to measure that impact. I think also that investors have a responsibility toward a society, and that they really have to finance and to support innovation. And to do that, there are a couple of things that an investor has to consider before investing. So of course, I think the first thing that he has to consider is the product. So in terms of technology, but also product market fit. Is the product adapted to the consumer? Does it answer a real problematic on the market? So that's, I think, something that investors have to consider. So now I want to talk to you about maybe the different things that I consider in an investment when I look, at an early stage company, so that you also have, a sense of what's really important to prepare in your pitch. So the first thing, of course, when you're looking at an early stage company, is the team. Team is really important, and you really want to start your pitch by literally telling the investor why you're the one person on earth able and capable of doing what you're doing. So that's what you really want to convince the investor of. Second, I think market validation is also really important. You want to test your product as soon as you have a first version. You don't want to develop a product away from the market for 1 year and then realize that it's not working and then it's not what people were waiting for. So first advice would be test and learn, and make several versions and work in a 3 month period of time. The third thing that we would consider, when looking at a pre-seed investment is, of course, the consumers. So we're really looking into the market and trying to find elements about the consumer. So if you're writing your pitch, just make the work easier for the investor and put some real data about what consumers want, what is what does the market look like. So market environment, competition, etc. That's a third thing that is really important at a pre-seed stage, because you don't have any historical data. So you really need to believe in the market opportunity. And on the opposite, some red flags that you don't want to show the investors is, first, when you're pitching, if you're two on the call, you and your co-founder, you really have to find a way to coordinate yourself, because you don't want to be interrupting your co-founder. You want to show the investor that there's a good harmony between the two of you. Another red flag is, of course, if you don't have a a consistent roadmap. So you really want to show the investor that you have everything into your head, that it's planned and that you think about it. So you don't want to, like, of course, sell an unrealistic plan, but you also want to show that you're ambitious. And startups at the beginning, well, of course, it depends of the area, but at least in food tech space, we're looking for a growth of 3x year on year at the minimum in the beginning. And then, of course, it stabilized a bit. But at the beginning, you really want to show the investor that you're ambitious. So I think that the two red flags in my mind would be this. I would say that one advice I would give, food tech entrepreneurs is to also send samples. You're building in the end the product, and the investor want to, test that product. So just send samples, and it's really something that sometimes you don't think about, but we really value entrepreneurs that take that initiative. So I was really happy to talk to you today and to have the opportunity to participate to this chat. So thanks a lot. If anyone wants to reach out to me to pitch an idea or pitch a young startup, I would be really happy to. You can reach me on LinkedIn. But just remember that we're only focused on Europe, so we can't invest elsewhere. Thank you very much. Bye.
Hi, my name is Terry Canning, and I'm the first of the startup speakers. I am founder and CEO of Catalai, which is the world's first autonomous software company for monitoring livestock using machine vision. A little bit of history about myself, first of all, because this is my second business. I grew up on a dairy farm in County Armagh, Northern Ireland, studied engineering and worked for about 9 years in the cloud computing world, working in places such as Silicon Valley and Beijing. And in 2004, I applied that knowledge of cloud computing to the livestock industry and founded the world's first software as a service for managing livestock. And I grew that up over the next 10 years until we're managing 4 million cattle worldwide. And I sold that business in 2015 to the Wheatsheaf Group. Our focus in that company and Catalai as well is how we get better data from farmers about their livestock. And we need that better data to be able to help improve farm efficiencies, to improve genetics, but more and more importantly, we need that to improve animal welfare standards. Animal welfare is a big issue now for the sector because we need to really demonstrate that we keep high levels of animal welfare within our dairy farms. So what we do with Catalai is we use a low-cost 2D security camera, and we record footage of dairy cows as they enter and exit a milking parlour. We pull that footage up into the cloud, where we run various neural networks on that footage that segment out the cow, identify her, and then derive specific insights. So we spent the last 18 months working on this. I teamed up with a guy called Adam Askew, who had spent 12 years working in this technology for cancerous tumor detection. So he joined with me. We raised about $1 million in seed funding, and he brought his entire team with him. We also started working with a team at Elliott in Queens on a KTP to start developing the various algorithms that we need to derive these insights. So our first insight, which is a mobility scoring or lameness prediction of the dairy farmers, has been trialed and validated by the University of Liverpool. And we're bringing that to market with a number of retailers in GB and also within the US as well. So I think it's a very exciting time to be in the ag tech space. Whenever I compare with my experience back in 2004, where people thought you were a bit crazy trying to bring software to the farming industry, now it's a multi-billion-dollar industry where there are lots of investors, lots of large companies that want to work with you, lots of universities that you can work with as you develop out your technology. So my advice is, if you have an idea for the ag tech space, you should look at what that developing that technology is going to take, but also look for customers. How are you going to add value to those customers, and how are you going to create a value proposition that will encourage them to actually buy the solution, and where you can sell that right across the supply chain, because you do have different players, stakeholders, whether it's farm input providers, retailers, or the farms themselves. Thank you very much.
My name is Lorenzo Conti. I am founder and managing director at Crover, where we have developed the world's first underground drone. And we're using it to help grain storage operators maintain the quality of their stock. Why are we doing this? Because cereal grains are the cornerstone of our global food system. Yet, grain storage losses are the largest post-harvest and pre-shelves. And currently, there is no way to verify the condition of grains while still in storage in units like silos and sheds. So what we've done is we have equipped the little Crover Robo with sensors for temperature and moisture, so that it measures these two parameters as it moves autonomously through the bulk of the grain, hence building a 3D map of conditions of the bulk and helping grain storage operators identify critical conditions early and take proactive actions through what people refer to as integrated pest management before they're able to develop. We found out about the seedbed program during the very early stages, where it was still just myself and my co-founder Artem. I was still kind of nearing the end of my PhD at the University of Edinburgh, working in the field of granular rheology or granular physics, where I got lucky enough to discover the what we're starting to refer to as the Crover effect, effectively the first method for locomotion at fully buried depths in bulk solids. So not just grains, but also sand, powders, and any other assembly of solid granular particles, which has now been protected through our UK patent, and we have filings in the top markets across the world. And we discovered the seedbed program at that stage where we still needed to do an extensive amount of customer discovery, validating a lot of our assumptions. We have some ideas about how we wanted to develop the robo and the system for grain storage monitoring, but we needed to talk to more people, and also we needed support as a as a first-time founder. I was also looking for ways to learn about how to lead a startup. So the seedbed program came at an ideal time. I think the great thing that attracted us to it, which was proven during the program, was the fact that most accelerator programs out there, they are very generic, and they're not able to deliver the the key contacts in the industry that someone operates in, or they might deliver advice which maybe doesn't apply to the type of industry that we're working on. So in our case, the agri-tech industry, as it might be the case for a lot of the attendees today. So through the program, there were a lot of benefits. I would say the main ones was the fact that it opened up to us the EIT food network of some of the leading corporates and cooperatives across Europe, a lot of which we have established, contacts, or let's say a friendship that we are carrying forward, and hopefully it's leading to, hopefully we'll lead this summer to the first pilots of our system. And also the fact that we were basically handed out 10,000 euros in money to travel non-stop for about 4 months and a half, which is what we did. We toured Europe. This was obviously before COVID, but we toured Europe and visited as many grain storage sites as we could, talked to as many potential partners as we could. And also, the team was really supported every time we needed something. Every time we wanted to talk to a specific company, they would find ways to put us in touch with them. And we were really fortunate to be in the program, and it was very pivotal for us. And since starting the program, we have been able to expand the team. We're now 6 full-time, 3 part-time. We've managed to move into let's say a proper workshop and lab, obviously intermittent right now with the COVID situation, but and we are just getting ready for our first equity fundraise. But we've also gotten really fortunate with grants since the program, and we've managed to accumulate a significant amount of equity funding as well. So definitely, the best program we've been in together with the Food Accelerator Network program. It seems like we were also one of the few fortunate companies to be able to jump straight from one year to the next, from seedbed to EIT Fund, and that further accelerated our development and our connections. So if there's anything more that you'd like to know about us, feel free to reach out to us and help us start #SavingGrains. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Sean, co-founder of Micron Agri-Tech. We are an Irish-based startup, and we're looking to use data and technology to help farmers improve their animals' health and increase efficiency and productivity and profitability on farm. So our first product is Micron Kit, and this is a pen-side kit that would allow a farmer or a vet to rapidly detect parasite infection in their herd. So why are we solving this problem? Well, we actually started our journey in 2019 by looking at the global issue of resistance to medication. And then we found that this is a particularly big problem in agriculture, where there's a lot of antimicrobial medication being used. And in particular then, parasites are the #1 health issue in grazing animals, such as cattle or sheep. But at the moment, if a farmer wanted to test their animals for parasites, they would need to send a fecal sample to a lab, and then they're going to be waiting up to 5 days to receive their results. And this is just really way too long, and a farmer's most valuable asset is their time. So what a lot of farmers do is, instead of testing, they will just regularly medicate their animals with what's called anthelmintics, which is the class of antiparasitic medication that is facing a lot of resistance issues. So because of this overuse and the regular dosing, the EU in particular is looking to crack down on these habits to really reduce the global threat of resistance. So from the start of 2022, these medications will no longer be available over the counter, and they will be prescription only, meaning that farmers will have to increase the amount of testing they're doing. But as we've discovered already, the system, the infrastructure in place for that is really slow, and it leaves them with a slow system. So that's where Micron Kit comes in. Farmers can have Micron Kit on farm. They can perform rapid parasite tests whenever they need to, so then they can make informed decisions on whether or not they need to medicate their animals. And of course, parasites have a detrimental impact on things like feed efficiency, animal weight, milk production in dairy animals. So really, regular testing and keeping on top of the infection levels in the herd can increase animal productivity and obviously profitability over time. So whereabouts are we in our journey? We are essentially right now, we're at an MVP stage. We've done extensive on-farm testing. We've done clinical testing and sort of customer usability testing. And really, over the course of the next few months, our goal is to just continue to fine-tune and get ready to launch and scale the business rapidly. So essentially, that's why we've applied and we're hoping to partner with the EIT Food Network, because they have that network across Europe that we can really tap into to use to do a lot of market validation and connecting with the end customer to ensure that the product ticks every single box before it goes out on the market. So look, that's a brief overview. If anyone wants to learn more, you can go to micronagritech.com, where you can find some more information, and you can reach out to us if there's any questions. So thank you very much.
Big thank you to all the speakers there. I found that particularly interesting perspectives from investors, from academic entrepreneurs and business entrepreneurs, all using very similar customer discovery, market validation methodologies, be it through EIT Food Seedbed, through the iCure program or the Lean Launch program. So if you would like to revisit any of this, we're going to load the video of this session to the InterTradeIreland website and the Cubis website. And I'd just like to say thank you very much for all your participation. If you are interested, if you think this journey is for you and you want to get involved in one of those programs to test your early ventures, you'll find contact details on those websites also.